Hello, my name is Melissa, and I'm a holistic health and life coach, and I am so excited to share with Pearl today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under. Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain or clear? Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no shade.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl, and I want to welcome you back to another Conversations with Pearl. And I'm so excited because today we have a great guest. And you guys know I'm all about self-care, all about putting yourself first, and that includes your health and wellness. And this is no different today. We have an amazing guest. Her name is Melissa Rohlfs, and she is a certified holistic health coach and life coach. She helps women that are very busy to find freedom and feel at peace with food, their bodies, and their lives. She teaches women easy new strategies that they can use to feel better instead of turning to food. And you guys know my last 7 months with the loss of my son, that was a big challenge for me. She's also committed to empowering women to break free from dieting, emotional eating, and self-image issues so they can ditch the diet mentality and feel empowered in their own skin, which I love. After her own tumultuous history with food, withholding, and then later binging, she learned how to deal with the core issues around her broken relationships with food. And as a result, she felt called to go to school and learn to teach other women how to do the same. She graduated from the Health Coach Institute as a holistic health and life coach in 2018, and she is a proud owner of Free to Be Coaching, and she's also proud Boilermaker alumna and living in Arizona with her husband, Chad, and her 2 kiddos. Melissa, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Pearl. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you, and I just love everything I shared about you just now is my jam. I'm so glad to have you today. And I know that our listeners are going to be really inspired because we talk often here about self-care, but often too in my world is the dieting piece and the yo-yo dieting. And I hate that word dieting because we all know what it means. And so I'm excited for you to share today. So let's start off with sharing a little bit about you. I know we shared your bio, but what led you, maybe go into deeper with what led you to start this coaching journey that you're on?
Yeah, so it was not something I ever set out to do. I went to college. I wanted to be a news anchor. I was going to be like Katie Couric and just rocking on the air. And obviously that didn't happen. But it was my own journey, Pearl, with trauma and really just figuring out different modalities of healing and things that worked for me. And really that set me on this trajectory because of my own journey and my own experience and the impact that food and healing and all of this holistic health had to offer for myself and my family. So that's a little bit of why I do what I do.
So you're in Arizona. Are you from Arizona?
Oh, heavens no. I am a Midwest girl, grew up in Indiana, have lived all over the Midwest and moved out to Arizona about 4 years ago. So
Awesome.
we like to move and we're not military either.
Well, I got that in common with you. My parents left Florida, which is actually where I'm at now. I tell everybody I did a triangle around the states twice because when my dad was in Vietnam, we would stay in Jacksonville, but when he went off to war, we'd go from North Carolina to upstate New York. And then I went to high school in Florida, and my parents, the year I graduated high school, was like, "We're going to California." I'm like, "Hey, why not? Let's go." And I hated it. And I met my husband shortly after when I gave my notice to my roommate I was going to move back home to Florida. And so the rest is history. We stayed in California 10 years, then went off to Virginia for probably about 10 years. And now we've been in Florida again for 17 years. So we're not military, although he does work for the Department of VA, but we're not military.
Okay, there you go. So we're transient.
Yeah. So tell me about the eating, and I know you turned to binging. Share with us a little bit about that story for you.
Yeah, so I think, it started when I was a little girl. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I remember being 8 and keeping food and candies and cookies and lots of junk in my room. And I don't think my parents would have found out, except for we had little mice that came in and pooped on the bed and told on me. So I remember being very young and using food as a comfort and to feel good. And that started in childhood, obviously. But then you get into high school and start dating and you want to get the attention of boys. At least I did. And so I struggled with the weight and I wasn't thin enough. So did the withholding. I never would like binge and purge. I would binge and then like withhold. It was completely unhealthy. But just that was my journey, was trying to either use food for comfort or to withhold to get attention. And it was always this relationship with food of, oh, it's only about weight. That was my frame of reference. Food and weight is the only two connections. The only thing that food has to do with is weight. And I learned through my own journey that that could not be further from the truth.
Yeah, like you were saying, like I shared a little bit about you in your bio, was that, food also becomes it's definitely that emotional tie. And I lost over 60 pounds on my journey. And last year in July, we lost our son tragically in a car accident. And I found myself very quickly going back to an old habit that I hadn't been to in years, but it was that comfort of going, this is what I know that brings me comfort. This is very tragic. I want the comfort right now. And so it was about the end of November, and I was just like, we were supposed to go to Buffalo for New York for Thanksgiving, and we couldn't go because I had gotten COVID. And then my husband's like, I can't go because of the fact that he's been around me. And then my son and his girlfriend were going to go, and they got snowstorms. So we were all stuck, right? And we were all stuck in our own homes, not being able to be together. And I just said to myself as I was journaling that day, and I was like, I don't want this anymore. This is not what Matt remembered me as, and this is not what I want. So I just made the commitment that I'm going to back to what I know, back to the healthy choices that I know, and find different ways to work through the grief and work through the emotional roller coaster that I was on. And that's what I did. And it's been since the end of November, I'm down 20 pounds, which I feel so great about, making good, healthy choices again. But you're right. It's all about that emotional eating and that comfort. And so I would love to tap more into that. So I'm a mental fitness coach, and I talk about the positive, that positive intelligence, what we tell ourselves. And when we tell ourselves we're not worthy, we start bringing ourselves down that rabbit hole and hiding the food or binging or other things that is all tied around food or overeating. And tell us more about that. Like, educate the listeners that are listening on some of that for us.
Sure. So I think it really kind of depends on what are you looking for and what do you need? Because as you shared with your story, it's really easy to go back to wanting that feeling. And I think it's so easy to associate feeling good with food, because if you think about it, when babies are crying or when we're little, what do our parents do to make us feel better? They will, if you're nursing mom, you'll nurse your child, or you'll give them a binky, or you'll give them a cookie. Like, there's so much involved in that. I think that it's really easy for us to associate food with comfort because that's what we were taught. That's how we were raised, most likely. I remember my mom potty training me with M&Ms. Oh, great. You went to the bathroom. Here's an M&M. Like, it's just the way that we're raised. And so I think there's a lot of it that goes with that. But what I love about your story, and I'm very sorry for the loss of your son, is that you started to work through your emotions and your feelings differently. Because when we turn to food, it makes us feel good in the immediacy, but for the long term, it doesn't. And so I think it's really finding different ways to feel good or learning new strategies that we can use to feel better, long extending beyond just that here and now.
Yeah, it was that for me, it was like that immediate comfort. He comes in the door every day. Now he wasn't coming in. It's like that was that comfort. And, I knew from being a coach myself that that was not the right choices. But like I've shared with my clients, I've had clients come to me and they're like, well, I want to start working with you. And I'm like, well, why? Especially if I know they already have a coach, and they'll be like, well, because my coach said they do everything 100% the way they teach me, but I don't believe them. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, good. I'm glad you're firing them, because if anybody is coaching you, and this is for the listeners as well, if you're being coached and the coach is telling you, I live my life 100% on point that I'm teaching you, they're lying. because I'm the example that I live my life by what I taught. Life is not perfect. I had roller coasters. I still have roller coasters, but the biggest roller coaster was the loss of our son. And it's like, I tell everybody all the time that when I work with them or I have friends, I'm like, listen, life isn't 100% perfect. It's never going to be. It's never going to be. And if you do, I'll sell you some swampland in here in Florida because it's not going to happen. And so the big thing is tapping in, like you said, to the emotions of why am I turning to this bag of chips? Why am I turning to the bag of M&Ms? Why do I want to go get ice cream? Whatever that is, or why am I just eating more than I know I shouldn't eat to start with? And that's the big thing, is tapping into that emotion. So I like to know, Melissa, share with the listeners how you help your clients tap an emotion and recognize what that emotion is that's causing them to make those choices.
Yeah, I think that's a really great starting point, is that awareness and that curiosity, because I think so many times we're so quick to say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't do this. And we'll shame and we'll guilt and we'll condemn ourselves. And that's just adding emotion on top of it, which makes us feel worse. And if we already feel bad and our baseline of feeling bad is to reach for food, for comfort, and we add more onto it, that just perpetuates the cycle. So I think it's really stepping back and getting curious and aware around, what am I feeling? And really giving them a safe space to share their feelings. Because I think a lot of times as women, if we say we're angry or we're, I don't know, upset, then there's so much labeling and judgment that can come up with that. So I think if we can have a safe space to share our emotions and be accepted and not judged, I think that's a really big part of the process too. Because a lot of times, I know for myself as a woman, it was like, oh, I'm scared to tell my husband that I'm mad at him, because I don't know why, like something from childhood probably, but just those patterns and those beliefs that what we know from growing up, I think really kind of we bring to the here and now. So I think giving people a safe space where there's no judgment, they can say how they feel and really start to connect with how they're feeling. Because I think a lot of times we're not connected with how we're feeling. All we know is that we're uncomfortable, we're upset, and we want to feel better, so we reach for the food. But if we can label the emotion, the feeling, the experience, I think that really helps a lot, just to be able to articulate it.
Yeah, because oftentimes, I think is that false, like we talk about fear, how false it is. And the thing is like, we get so afraid to have communication. And that's where, for me growing up, my parents didn't communicate. If they fought, they didn't talk sometimes for 2 weeks at a time. And then it was like, oh, everybody's fine now. I was like, how did that happen? You didn't have the example. And so when I met my husband and, we would have a disagreement, we needed to talk, I was like, I would shut down because that's all I knew. And then he'd start having the conversation for me. And I was like, oh no, that's not what I would have said to you. So now and he quickly taught me I wanted to communicate for myself. But you're right. We're afraid to share with somebody what's on our mind. And for Chuck and I, a lot of times what we'll do is if we know we need to discuss something with somebody, we'll be like, are you open to receiving right now? Like, I need to share something with you. I don't know what your mindset is right now. And if you're not, then the commitment is that within 24 hours, you make yourself available, and then that way you honor the other person and say, you know what, it's just not a good time for me right now. And then you don't feel like you've been ignored or you're not listened to because you're acknowledging that, okay, they need time. It's okay. And that's what we do. And it's worked out really, really great. Now, it's not to say we don't have a little moment here or there that it's not 100%, but that's kind of like our grounding of how we go into a conversation. And I think it's important to know. And that's the thing too, is I think you have to learn the communication skills or learn what they call the love language of your person you're talking to or that person you love, because if you can understand that, then you can understand how to share it with them. And then that helps your emotional well-being as well. Cause then you're like, okay, this is how they show up and let me talk to them in that way. And I love to share the story. I do a retreat. We do a pajama retreat every year in September, which by the way, we have 6 spots left. And so we go this year, we're going to the Gulf Shores of Alabama. And one of my attendees, I won't say her name for her privacy, but one of the attendees had come and she had shared that she wanted 2 things and she didn't feel like she was being heard. And so as we broke it down, it wasn't that her spouse wasn't hearing her. It's just that for him, who is a lot like my husband, it's about the money, right? Is it in our budget? So as we coached her at the retreat and as I coached her after the retreat, you have to understand that it's not that he doesn't want you to have it. He wants to make sure that he has the means to let you have it. And so you need to speak from that point and understand. And so we talked about give him options. Okay, this is what I want, but here are some of the options, and break it down price wise so that he understands you've done your research and you're respecting his concerns. And then it came to a vehicle as well. She wanted a certain vehicle. He wanted her to have a certain vehicle. And so it's just speaking to his language of why she wanted this vehicle and why it was important to her. And let me tell you, she got the vehicle she wanted and she got the furniture she wanted. And to watch her step into that empowerment, which is our letter E in our Shiro method, is so beautiful because she's got that confidence to go, oh, this works. I just have to speak in the way they understand. And I don't have to be emotionally beat myself up over it. So I love that you remind us of that. So tell us a little bit about so your life. Okay. So we talk about eating and how we're eating. How does your family, is it your whole family buys into this? How do you guys approach that? Because I know I can tell you some of the people that I've coached, some of the clients I've coached, they're like, listen, my family wants to eat this way. They will not eat the way I need to eat. Right. So how do you, does your family buy into it, or how do you balance that out if they don't? And how do you suggest to somebody if their family's not on board, how they balance it?
Kind of a loaded question because I feel like when the kids were little, it was easier for them to be on board and it was what they knew. I think thankfully for us, part of our story is our daughter had undiagnosed food allergies. And so she would vomit every night. And so I think she learned when I eat these foods, I don't feel well. So that was kind of the blessing in disguise there. But now that they're, middle school and high school and they're seeing how their friends eat and there's the pressure to fit in, it's a little bit harder to navigate, but I think it's just being mindful and, this is what happens when you eat this way. You get to choose how you want to feel. It's your decision, but just, my job is to equip and empower you to do what's best for you. And so you get to decide what that outcome is. But I think, having that groundwork and kind of explaining this is why we do the way that we do. This is why we don't eat like your friends sometimes. And of course you do sometimes because it's life. Like you said earlier, you can't do 100% of the time. It's just not realistic. So I think it's being flexible and available to the situation, because there are birthday parties, there are celebrations, there are things at school, things come up. But I think it's just, kind of keeping that consistency and kind of having that baseline and that foundation that's really helpful, but having the ability to pivot and go off foundation from time to time when needed.
So I was helping. I love that because, and you have to have that flexibility because there are birthdays, there are anniversaries, those things happen, they come up. And one of my favorite clients, she came to me, her mom brought her to me to help her. She was in middle school. I just love her to death. And if she's listening, she'll know who she is. And she came to me in middle school. She was probably the tallest in her school. And she was a ballerina and everybody thought she should be a basketball player. Like everybody's putting these things in her head. And her mom came to me because she's like, I've heard about you and I heard that you don't make it about a number. You make it about the emotion to it and how to get through it, even when it's challenging. And I was just so honored to start working with her. And she actually inspired her uncle to start with me as well. So it was fun to watch both of them. Like she inspired him. And so I worked with her all the way through high school. And what we did was it wasn't about what she was eating. She ate all the vegetables she was supposed to eat, all the right balance of everything. And so the big thing we had to talk about was school, the lunch and how to do that. And she had just such a beautiful attitude. She's like, I'm doing this. I know it's healthy for me. I don't care what my friends say. And if they don't like it, then they're really not my friends. And I just thought that was so powerful. And I told her, I said, if you keep this lesson up the rest of your life, let me just tell you the things that are going to be so amazing in your life are going to be unbelievable. And so I got to go see her in the Nutcracker play, and she was the tallest girl on the stage. It was so amazing. And then I got to see her graduate high school, and she's in her second year of college now. And I don't get to see her often. She, when she comes home, she's pretty busy, but I follow her on social and she looks amazing. And her confidence, that was a big thing too, is when you step into that confidence and you can say, I've got this, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to have, I've got it under control. And even when I was working with her, we talked about the thing, I talk about you're not going to be perfect 100% of the time. So do not put that pressure on yourself. You're a teenager. Let's just talk about that. You're going to have that pressure. So if you have a cupcake, I don't want you to come to me and be like, oh my God. I go, if you want to know the healthy way to eat the cupcake, eat the cake and not the icing. I taught her those things to do so that she can feel included. And she went to a sleepover and they ordered pizza. I'm like, if they offer the option of having something without the pizza, go for it. I'm like, maybe you have the chicken wings with no sauce or something, you have something like that. So she did so amazing. Like I said, I'm so proud of her. And it really is like owning that emotion, understanding where the emotion comes from, because oftentimes we have trauma in our life that makes decisions we make come up. And I just love that you shared that with us. So what can a client expect? Walk me through a journey. I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this before, but walk me through a client journey with you as they come on board with you.
Oh gosh, so many come to mind. I think so many women come to me and they want to lose weight. Like that's what it's all about, right? And I think towards the time that we work together, they're like, wait, this is not about weight. This is not about the number or the size. This is about loving myself enough to live a healthy lifestyle, to honor my body, to listen to my body. I think it really kind of reconnects them to their body, what their bodies are saying. Our bodies are always talking. We just haven't been taught how to listen to them. So it's really helping them tap into their innate wisdom and what's in them and what their body needs and wants. Because it's not one size fits all, like we've been led to believe. We believe that what works for one works for all. And that's just not the case. We're unique and we need to honor those differences. So it's really teaching women how to honor those differences and really kind of what they're looking for when they turn to food, what's happening inside, how to identify what they really need instead of food, because a lot of times we just recognize a hunger and we think it's physical, but it might be social, it might be emotional, it might be mental, it might be another area that's lacking that we think we need to fill with food. So it's really kind of helping them reconnect to their bodies and find that freedom and peace with food in their bodies and their lives, because so many of us don't have that.
I love that you said too, it's not about the number. That's how I approach it all as well. My clients used to be, because I used, that's all I used to coach on was just the health and wellness, the eating portion. And now I've expanded to life coaching and basically the whole balance of it all. But they used to get so frustrated with me because I'd be like, they're like, so when are we gonna weigh myself? I'm like, no, not right now, and they were like, so near the end of the appointment, I would, because they, in our mind, we tell ourselves we want to know that number. But they used to laugh because I do art therapy and they used to be like, I gotta color a picture with my coach. It's helped me get healthy. I'm like, yeah, I want a picture, and they would be like, I got a journal. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna journal. So it was fun to watch them walk through that. And I'm like, I need you to open your mind away from this diet, like from the word diet. I need to open your mind to tapping into who you are. I need you to understand what your emotions are that brought you to my door. Like what emotions I love seeing you, but I don't want to see you continue this emotional roller coaster, And they would just be like, okay. And it was, but I love what you said about changing the mind around the thought process around dieting. And so tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of untangling diet culture because we've been led to believe, like, oh, I'll do this plan, I'll accomplish this goal. And it just is so damaging because we're not honoring our bodies. We're not honoring our hunger and fullness. We're not, we're just looking at, oh my gosh, this person did this and now they're happy. But are they really happy? Are they really energetic? Like there's such a discrepancy between health and weight loss. Like they're two separate things. They're connected, yes, but just because you lose weight doesn't mean you're healthy. I think it's the way that you go about it and the approach you take to it and how you're doing and are you sleeping? What's your stress like? There's so much more to health than just the weight loss and the food. And so that's really like my goal is for women to see that whole picture and to really see themselves and to know that they matter, that they're worth taking care of, and that they can move forward from anything that's been hurtful in the past and they can really find that freedom, because I think that diet culture is so ingrained in us. I mean, I remember going to an exercise class and doing my first diet probably when I was like late elementary, early middle school. Like that is young. And that's, early on, and that carried with me for how long. So if we could break that for young girls today, think of how like society could be changed. And I'm sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox.
It's a soapbox we need to talk about because you're right. We tie everything back to figure and your weight. And it's really not. It's really about, are you healthy? Are you happy? How do you feel inside? I have a friend that she's like, I'm not worrying about the number on the scale, and it is what it is. I'm happy. Maybe I got to go to Lane Bryant or whatever, but I'm happy. I feel good in my skin. I'm like, that's what's important. If you feel good in your skin, then great, and just keep that up. Don't change that, because like you said too, you can do any plan. If you just follow the steps, you'll have success. But it's the end game. It's like, when you get to the end of the plan, then what? Right? It's like, okay, now I've lost this weight. Now what? Right? And so that's why, sounds like you and like me, I like to tie it around what's the mental thought behind why you're coming here? What's happened in your life that's caused you to take this journey? Whether it's somebody like me who lost a child, or it's a trauma you had in your life. Let's talk about that. And I oftentimes was like, I can't be the only one helping you on this. Like, they would start revealing to me things. I'd be like, I need to get you to a therapist. We're going to do this, and you're going to go to a therapist, because I want them, and I help them to understand it's more than just like we're saying here. It's more than just a number on the scale. And if you're listening and that's all you concentrate on, I'm going to challenge you to put your scale away somewhere where you don't know about it for at least 2 weeks, and really think about yourself and journal about how you feel, and how, and even the emotions about hiding the scale, because it's so powerful. I used to do that with my clients. I go in and like, well, I weighed myself every day this week. I'm like, no. I would have people bring me their scales. I'm like, if you don't bring me your scale, we're not meeting. Or I would call spouses and say, I need you to take that scale and I need you to put it away somewhere. And you are not allowed to share, because I need to get you behind the mindset of a number. You're more than a number. And that's, Melissa, sounds like what you do as well.
100%. I have a client I worked with, and God bless her, she was one of those who was weighing every day. And I said, you know what, sweetheart, like, let's see if we can find freedom from that scale. And by the time we had finished, she was done. She's like, I'm not weighing myself anymore. It's not a thing. Because I think it messes with our minds. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm this or I'm that, and it has so much more power than it really needs to. It's a number. Like, what does it really mean? What are we making it mean? And why?
It's so true. And even like when I started back on my journey with, like I said, in the end of November, I intentionally didn't I didn't even look at my scale. I kind of knew my number because I just gone to the doctors not too long before that. So I knew the number from the doctor's office, and we all know those scales are kind of crazy off. But I was like, I could tell my clothes are fitting different. And I was going back to my doctor. I was like, I just want to compare my scale to their scale. And I was like, wow, I think at that point I was like 12 pounds down or something. I was like, wow, that's so awesome. Okay, that's great. And I don't think I haven't been back on, like, I think I'm doing it like once a month just so I can have a check-in for myself. So I love, we have to get beyond that. Just have to get beyond that. So Melissa, tell us a little bit about your journey coming up. Like, what do you have coming up with your clients? Is there anything new you're doing? Anything exciting coming around the corner?
I just released a book. That's kind of exciting.
Tell us about your book. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's called Finding Freedom, and it's about helping people remove the obstacles to living a healthy and fulfilled life. So it's kind of my journey, some stories, some tools that might be helpful for people along the way, but just really like, what are the barriers? What stops you from living that healthy, free, fulfilled life? Is it the idea that you need to be a certain number on the scale, or that your life needs to look a certain way? Because I think so many times, Pearl, we get caught in this picture and this expectation of what life should look like, and then it doesn't, and we're disappointed, and we just sit in that. So how do you remove those obstacles? How do you get past that? And how do you really live the way that you're called to live?
That's awesome. What's your book called again?
Finding Freedom.
Finding Freedom. And so we'll make sure we'll put all the links in there. So where can people find the book?
Amazon.
Yay, awesome. And this is just your own book you did. That's fantastic. Yeah. And it's not easy to write a book, right?
No, it's not. It was like 4 years in the making.
I love it. I love it. Where I'm in a couple collaborative books, and I'm actually creating my own collaborative book right now. So my oldest son was born of my heart. So we adopted him when he was a month old. And my younger son was through in vitro. But my older son was mixed race, and he was the only mixed race child in our family. And he was the only mixed race child in his biological family. So everybody else around him was white. So before he passed, we had talked about doing a book about adopting interculturally. And when he passed, I was like, I can't stop this now. So he was 25 when he passed on July 25th. So we're going to do 25 stories of intercultural adoptions. And we're looking for those stories now. So if you're listening to this program, you can just send an email to hello@wsliving.com and put adoption interculturally, and we'll contact you. But it's my dedication to him about his story. And so we're looking forward to that. And so we're going to release it on July 25th on his 1 year anniversary is our goal. But it's not easy to write a book. And I think that's awesome. It's a great idea. So I want to talk a little bit about self-care. So Melissa, I talk often here about doing for yourself, putting yourself first. You have 2 kids and, you said they're middle and high school. And so, the craziness, and I don't know if they play sports or anything like
They
that.
do.
Oh, yep. So see, I got you. I had a football player. So tell us, how does Melissa incorporate self-care? And then also elaborate to how you communicate to your family that your self-care is not meaning that you don't love them.
Yeah, those are great questions. So I think for me, I have a few pillars of self-care. I always get up before everybody else. I get up early. I drink my hot lemon water. I read, I journal, I pray. That's how I start my day, non-negotiable, whether we're on a break, whether we're traveling, that's my jam. I'm up. I enjoy the quiet. It helps me settle and kind of get focused for the day. I think the other thing I do is I do movement. I exercise, whether it's going for a hike or doing something at home, but I always move my body to get those endorphins going. My food, I try to stay, eating my fruits and vegetables and whole foods and just really nourishing my body. Sleep is non-negotiable. That's another thing. And then I think the other thing that I've started to do this year that's been really quite, I don't know, I like it, is on Sunday nights, I will do a bath, and I'll do my Epsom salt bath, and I'll do my mud mask. And that's just kind of like my pampering self-care. But I think what that does for me is it helps me recharge, refuel. It helps me stay calm. I can handle things a lot more easier when, schedules get mixed up or there's miscommunications or things happen. I don't get as frazzled. So I think it just helps me stay more calm and steady. And I think it shows my kids, it's okay to take care of yourself. Mom is a person too. She has needs, she has desires, and she needs to take care of those. And that's okay. And I think it's setting an example for them, because even yesterday, my husband and son were at his basketball practice. And so my daughter and I were home, and I'm like, do you want to hang out? Do you need time? What do you need? She's like, I've been at school all day. I just need some time in my room. So I think it's teaching them that they have needs too, and it's okay to have those met.
And that's so important. I was talking with somebody in an episode before you and I got on today, and we were talking about that, about the fact that we need to be the example to our young kids, because we're more reactive than proactive in often cases, right? And so if we can set that example to our children, and I love the little girl that's on TikTok, and her mom, I just want to meet her mom someday, where she goes, I don't do negative today. And she's just so cute. This little tiny, if she's 7 years old, I'd be surprised. But she always comes out with these great positive mindset. I'm like, what a great thing her mom's teaching her now is I'm not doing negative. I'm beautiful. All these things that she says that's positive in her life. And we have to do that, because especially since COVID, the world is so much different, and the kids are on social media so much more, but they need to understand and have that example of people behind that social media screen they're not 100% living you're just seeing that quick break, but also be that example of saying, Mom, I just want to go sit in my room for a little bit. I've been at school all day. It's so powerful when we can teach our kids that lesson. I love that you did that. And so one of the things we do we have what's called the Shira League. And for the listeners, if you're new to the show, it's a community of women. We get together every Sunday evening, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. It started during COVID. I started seeing that there's a lot of ladies that were so overwhelmed with taking care of everybody in the house. They were having to be teachers as well. And they weren't teachers. They were balancing all this, in some cases they had to give up their job because of all the demands. And so I saw all this, stress and anxiety from women, especially women that I knew closely. And I was like, we have to do something. So I created this kind of self-care Sunday evening thing, and it's just grown, and we've continued it since COVID, and we call it the Shira League. And the Shira means different things. It's not just you're a female woman with a superpower, right? We all have superpowers, but really we wanted to tap into what that meant. And so we feel like I feel like it's a great way to end your week and it's a great way to start your week because we're working on self-care. We're working on different things, which I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on some of what we're working on. But Shiro, I want to walk through that with you and I want you to share some of your examples as well. So the S means strong. As you communicate, as you become better at saying no to others, stop being a people pleaser through this Shiro method that we do, you find this strength to be like, I am going to put myself first. I am not going to feel guilty about it, but I am going to communicate to those that I love or my job or whatever my responsibilities are. This is what I'm doing and this is how I'm doing it. And so when you think about strong and strength, I would love to know a time in your life when you had to tap that deep down into your soul and pull out that strength that you had to get you through something.
I think it was when I was diagnosed with PTSD because my husband was traveling for work and our daughter was 2 and had undiagnosed sensory processing disorder and food allergies. And our son was a newborn and not sleeping through the night. I was frazzled, exhausted, started meeting with a life coach who was a therapist as well. And she said, I think you have PTSD. So I think that diagnosis and really the strength that it took to walk down that road and to really change and to heal and kind of do a different way going forward than what I had come from. I think that was probably my moment of strength because I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I was thinking we have more than one thing in common because we're talking about your husband's traveling, you've got this little one and a newborn and all of that. It's overwhelming. And if you're a mom listening, we get it. It's very overwhelming if you're home and you're taking care of everybody while your spouse is traveling or significant other because it's a lot to balance. And I love we called it that we also had the word that we got rid of working stay-at-home mom, Melissa. We call it CEO moms because
I like
as
it.
being a mom, we're running a household, right? And so we need everybody on board. Everybody has a role, including if they're just as little as 4 or 5 years old. And I remember one time my husband, he was traveling and my older son, Matthew, had gotten really sick. He caught a flu or something. And he was so sick, he couldn't keep anything down. And I'd already gone to the doctors and they told me the Pedialyte, all that stuff. And they told me that, listen, I called again. I'm like, none of this is working. And I'm worried he's getting dehydrated. And they said, well, if this doesn't work, then you need to go to the store and buy this, I don't know what it was, something to help them stop getting sick. And if that didn't work, I had to go straight to the hospital. Well, it didn't work. So thank goodness I had a great sitter for my kids who watched them when I did go to the office. And I called her and I'm like, Robin, can you please, I can't go to the hospital by myself. And the thing was on top of that, my husband was away at a hotel that they didn't answer their phones after 9 o'clock at night. So I couldn't get a hold of my husband. That's before pagers, before cell phones. I couldn't get a hold of him. And here I am by myself, no family. And like I said, Robin came with us. And what got me was we're in there and my son was going to need, I think he was about 3 years old. He was going to need a shot or something. And he cried for my dad. He's like, I want Papa. And I was like going, all of a sudden, like all the tears just came. You just that guilt, right? And when you said that about your husband traveling, just that story came back in my head. And you have to, as a mom, especially if you've got a spouse that's traveling, you have to dig deep for that strength and to pull through that. And and then when you got on top of that, you got another child that's sick. It's just having challenges. It's hard. So I thank you for sharing that story. I know it's very vulnerable. So then the H stands for happy. So as you build that strength, you start realizing you deserve happiness, that you deserve to be happy, that by using your voice and communicating those needs, you can be happy and you start feeling happier. So take us to, what does happiness mean for Melissa?
Oh gosh. I think happiness means being your authentic self and knowing that you're loved and accepted and that because you are being your authentic self, you have the right people in place. There's nothing worse than being fake or trying to be something that you're not and having like all of this surface. I don't do surface very well. So just having all that surface is not my jam. So I think when we moved here to Phoenix, it was an opportunity for me just to show up as my authentic self. And we've got a great community. And I feel like that is just really happy because you know that you are loved and you're accepted and you belong for being who you are.
And I have to tell you, when I ask that question, I would say 80% of the time, that's the answer. being your
Wow.
authentic self. It's so, and that's what I do with the Shiro method is teaching you and coaching you how to become your authentic self. So I love that you reaffirm that letter H for us. So the letter E is empowered. And so as you become stronger and you find your happiness, then you become empowered to be like, I want to start my business, or I want to open a restaurant, or I don't want to work anymore. I want to be home. Like you become empowered to do those things that maybe fear was holding you back from doing. And so when you think about that, what came up in your life that if you had given into fear, you wouldn't have done? So tell us a time in your life where you were so scared to do that thing, but you said, fear is not going to hold me back. I'm going to do this thing. And what was that thing?
I think all of my life, like I was afraid to get married. I was afraid to have kids. I was afraid to move. I was afraid to start a business. I was afraid to write a book. Like everything I've done, I've just said, screw you, fear. I've pushed it aside and like gone forward. Um, yeah, because I think I lived so much of my life in fear before that I just wasn't going to go back there.
And that's powerful when you can recognize that fear is showing up in your life and it's holding you back. And you can say, no, I'm not doing that. And that's what I do I do a positive intelligence course. It's a 6-week course that we talk about mental fitness. And we talk about those thoughts that come in our head, right? And we talk about naming that saboteur, naming that judge that shows up. And so when Betsy shows up for me, I let her know, oh, we're not doing Betsy today, So like she has a name. And I think that's powerful when you identify it, you can name it and you can claim it. And then when she shows up, you can be like, nope, not doing that. So, because as you showed, if you'd given in to fear, there would be no marriage, there probably no kids, there would be no book, you would not be coaching, right? And so all those things for our listeners, that's what fear can do to you. It can stop you from all those successes that really is waiting for you. You guys have heard me say this 100 times on this show, that you come into this world and you've got a talent and you have a gift inside of you. And when you don't use it for yourself, that fear holds you back. That fear can allow you to do things that Melissa and I have done. But when you walk into that gift that you have and you don't pay it forward, like Melissa and I do, then you cheat everybody else around you. They don't get the gift of understanding that how food can traumatize our life, how it's connected to different things, how letting saboteurs or judges stop us from moving forward does not allow us to be the success that you deserve and you are today. So I love that example you gave us. And so the next letter is R. And I'm going to take this from one of my guests that I talked to yesterday. I like to say, I'm going to say it's glow up, right? So we're radiant. We've got beauty already, but the R stands for radiance. And so I feel like as you start really, when you get to the letter R in our Shiro method, then you're really like going, wow, I look pretty darn good. I feel pretty darn good. And so you really have this brighter emblem around you, like this brightness that just draws people to you, right? And so when you think about that, and like I said, glowing up, when you think about glowing up, what's happening in your life right now that you're like, I am glowing up to this?
It's so funny because I have a 14-year-old daughter. So when I hear glow up, I think of like hair and nails and like how she defines glow up. And I don't think it's that for me. I think it's more of like an internal peace and confidence and joy. But I think that exudes through how I show up and how I carry myself. So I think for me, like it's such a different definition than my teenage daughters.
That's so true. It's so opposite than our kids, right? Yeah, it's so opposite. All right, so the last one is O, and O stands for original. And as I just said, you are your original self when you come into this world. But as you've like nailed the Shiro method and you're glowed up now, you actually start walking and being that authentic self. And so I feel like, that original self starts shining through. So I want to know for you, what, Melissa, would being original mean to you?
I think it's having the courage to stand for who you are and what you believe in. And I think that you can be kind and you can be respectful when there are people that hold different perspectives. That's something we haven't seen a lot of in the past few years, but I think it's holding firm to your convictions and knowing who you are and what you stand for and why you believe the way that you do. And again, being kind and respectful and engaging other people, but not being swayed because that's what people want or what they expect, but really just being you because that's who you're made to be.
Yeah, and then that's also where the people pleasing shows up too. Then you stop people pleasing. You start saying no to things that are not going to allow you to be your original authentic self. And that's so powerful when you can step and walk into that. I want to thank you for helping us play along with the Shiro method. I think I'm very proud of her. I think she just exudes so much things that our women that are listening need to understand and walk through in their life. So, if you're listening, you want to know about the Shiro League or the Shiro Method, all you have to do is email Pearl at wsliving.com, or I'm sorry, email hello at wsliving.com and put in the comments Shiro, and we'll make sure you get the information on there. So now, Melissa, what we do in the Shiro League is we work on self-care. And this is what the show is all about, is how you put yourself first. What are you doing? And so one of the things that the ladies are working on is what brings them joy. And it's not just about, oh, my kids bring me joy, or, oh, the sun's shining, or I got to wake up this morning. Those are great things and they should bring you joy. But it's really about, why do your kids bring you joy? Why the sun brings, why is it that those things bring you joy? Because those things can bring you joy, but truly why? And so the Shirley community had to create 10 things that brings them joy and why. Like, they had to break it down. So now what I want to know is, ask you, what are your top 3 things that bring you joy and why do they bring you joy?
This one really caught me off guard. So our daughter is a freshman and she plays basketball, and the coach asked me to be the team mom. And at first I was really kind of scared and like the fear, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh. But I loved it. Like, those basketball girls and being that team mom brings me so much joy. Like, it is like my sweet spot. So that was a really surprising one. I think the other thing is being outside, being in nature, living in Arizona and getting the vitamin D and just enjoying that. I think that brings me joy. And I think the other thing is just my family and just being together and that connectedness. And really, I don't like when we're like together and on devices, but I like connecting and really being present and involved in each other's lives. So I think those are the 3 things that bring me joy.
Those are 3 beautiful things. I loved being the football mom. There was a group of us that did together. It was so much fun to see all the team together and the team camaraderie and all of that. Those are great examples. So now the other part of that they had to do was they had to work on the what not to do list. So what do they need to stop doing in their life that keeps them from enjoying the things that bring them joy? So we create grocery lists. We forget all these to-do lists, all these lists to get done, right? So tell us, Melissa, what would be on your not to-do list so that you can enjoy the 3 things you shared, the being the mom, connecting with and the nature?
3 things on my not to-do list. Do not should on yourself. Like, we're so quick to should. Just stop with the shoulds. I think that would be one. I think the other one would be judgment towards ourselves and towards others. If we can replace judgment with curiosity, that would be powerful. And I think the third one is to be present in the moment and not be so focused on the expectation or the past or the future, but really just be present. I don't think I answered those.
No, you did great. Yeah. Those
Okay.
are shoulds. The shoulds are powerful because, I love those. Those were great examples. And so the final part of the pie that they do is, once we've identified both of these, what we're doing, we're actually working on breaking up their goals for the year. So we don't start doing this in January, because I feel like everybody's, oh, I'm going to lose weight. They're doing all these things and then they don't succeed. I'm like, I don't want your year to start. Just take a breather during January. Kind of think about what it is you want. Don't on December 31st, we're writing all these things, but do you really want that stuff? So take the month of January to kind of like sit back and be like, these are the things that I want. And so on that, they had to create their dream sheet. So they had to come up with 6 goals, 6 big goals they want to do this year. And then each year during the year, we're going to break them out to 6-week increments. So they have to create a meditation in their own voice, record it, which freaks them all out, reminding them of what they're going to accomplish. Like that they're sitting there and their little girl inside them at the end of 6 weeks is telling them all the things they did over the last 6 weeks. And so I would love to know, Melissa, it's December 31st and you're sitting back and you're going to do the recording as that little girl looking up at Melissa and telling her, this is what you did this year. And how cool was that? So what is she telling you at the end of the year of 23?
Well, if you asked me last year, it would have been write a book. I think it would just be to continue to empower women to find freedom and break free from that diet culture and all the programming and the self-loathing, and really just see that they matter and that they're worth taking care of. Really just to get that message out, I think.
I love that. And so what are you and your family doing? What have you guys done this year together?
What have we done together this year?
At the end of December, at the end of the year, what can you look back and say you and the family did?
Oh gosh, well, we went on amazing vacations to celebrate birthdays. We've been present. We've loved well. We've communicated well. We've worked through conflict. We've lived our best life.
I love that. Live your best life. Thank you for playing along with me, Melissa. I think it's so much fun. And, the listeners that come on, I don't necessarily share what questions I'm going to ask my guests because I want it to be authentic. I don't want, oftentimes when I used to do that, I'd have some guests that be come in and want to talk all about their brand. I want to hear about your business, but I also want to know about you. I want to know the self-care piece. I want you to inspire. And I feel like you've done that today with everybody and playing along. I so appreciate that. So tell everybody, Melissa, where everybody can find you.
Sure. My website is free, the number 2, the letter B, coaching.com. So free2becoaching.com.
Awesome. And do you have anything anything on your website or anything you want to give away?
Yeah, I've got freebies. I've got the ultimate guide to feel good without food. I've got a guide to kick sugar cravings. I have feel good without food strategy session. I have resources on trauma. It's like a treasure trove.
And do they get that all at your website?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
They do.
Yeah. So we'll make sure everybody has your website when we get everything shared out with us as well. And so the next thing we have is our cards, Melissa. And we let Melissa know. I mean, I can't believe I looked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're almost done here. It's crazy how fast it goes. So Melissa has been forewarned. We're doing our Better Questions, BetterLife.com. If you're new to the show, they're called Better Questions, Better Life. And they are literally questions you can just pull out the card, the deck, anytime, 77 different questions to ask yourself to make you think about what's happening in your life, to journal on, to meditate on, or just pull a card to have a great day on. So Melissa's going to tell me when to stop shuffling, and then we're going to ask her the question on the card. So here we go.
I feel like you're frozen. Okay, you unfroze.
Okay.
Stop.
Sorry about that. Okay.
No, you're good. I'm like, wait.
All right. It says, who am I? Who is Melissa?
Ooh, I think Melissa is a strong warrior. Like, I think she is feisty, and I'm only using that word because I just used it on my son. But she is compassionate and caring and encouraging and lives fully.
And I see that in you. Everybody who's not watching, she just glows with all of that. And if you do watch, you can find us on YouTube at Conversations with Pearl, and you can like us and subscribe. We'd love to have your review about the show. And so, Melissa, every morning I do an affirmation. Do you have an affirmation that you do as well?
I do not.
Oh, okay. But you journal, right, in the morning? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I journal.
So my affirmation is every morning I tell myself, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to have a great day. No matter what comes my way, I have a lesson to learn from it today. So that's my every morning I say that. Let me tell you, it's carried me through the last 7 months pretty strongly. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So I want to thank you for being on today. And those that are listening, if you want to know about the Shiro League or the Shiro Method, you can go and email us at hello@wsliving.com. That's hello@wsliving.com. But if you want to learn more about self-care and really get the ultimate guide for some quick tips in starting your life and some new self-care, just go to pearlsebook.com. That's pearlsebook.com and download our ultimate guide to guiltless self-care. And as I want to share with everybody today, as we get ready to close out the show, you know that every year you come into this world when you're born and you have this oyster outside that's a little rough, and you have to open up that oyster to start working on your inner self. And as you do, you find your own inner pearl to greatness. And I hope you go out today and I hope you find your inner pearl to greatness. Have an amazing day. And Melissa, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to connect with you.
sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm